Here's how I turn my stock tank pool into an on-demand hot tub. First, remove the front panel of the water heater. Since this water heater doesn't actually come with a power source, you need to add one, and in this case, we added a plug. I got this extension cord from Ace Hardware. It's 16 gauge, 13 amp, and the next thing you're going to want to do is cut off what is called the female end, which is in my hand. After you remove the female end, you will want to strip the wires. Strip about 3/4 of an inch down the wire. Once complete, feed the extension cord back through the outlet port. So now it's time to start wiring. So we're going to start with the ground wire. Here I am unscrewing what we're actually going to attach the ground wire to. We're going to use a stud terminal. This is what I'm crimping on here. And this is actually the wrong size. We need an 8 to 10 size stud. It's going to be blue in the video. Yes, that one fits. Here I am rescrewing it back on. Apologies, I didn't get a video of this, but I connected black to black and white to white with these electrical wire nuts. Now we need to secure our electrical cord to the heater using the plastic clips already provided. All you do is unscrew the clip from how it's attached to the water heater, and then you slip it over the electrical cord and bend it to the shape that works for you. So we're going to set the water heater aside for now. We'll come back to it. We're going to focus on the plumbing portion. My stock tank pool setup is a poly tank on the inside and a galvanized steel tank on the outside. At this point, we're ready to install the intake and the output valves. I used a 3-inch bimetal arbored hole saw to drill the hole in the steel tank, and then I used a 3/4-inch bimetal arbored hole saw for the interior poly tank. I want to reiterate that you're going to need to do this twice. So this is the intake one that I'm showing you, but you also need to do the same thing for the output valve. The intake valve is going to draw the water into the heater, and your output valve is going to put the hot water back into the pool. Now let's start putting everything together. Take a male 3/4-inch hose connector and wrap the male end in plumber's tape. Specific parts, because you'll have to use a few of these, you'll want to do a decently thick layer of the plumber's tape. In this next clip, I'm actually dry finning before actually putting it together, so just pretend that there's plumber's tape on that male connector. Here I am building out the intake mechanism. Since the pool is double walled, having an internal and external tanks, we are putting together an extension piece to then connect the intake filter. We don't want debris going into the heater for obvious reasons. I'm connecting the male connector to the hose and tightening the metal slip ring around the hose to secure it in place. Next, take your spigot and wrap a thin layer of plumber's tape around the threads and connect to the male connector. The distance between the wall of the internal tank and the external tank is about 3 inches, but you'll need some additional room, so cut about 4 inches of the hose and repeat the process to connect a male connector to this end as well. As a reminder, you will need 2 of these assemblies. You'll need one for output, one for intake. So go ahead and repeat the process and create another spigot hose connector assembly. Let's move on to installing this initial part. So I've already drilled out where I'm placing my intake and output valves, but be sure to space them a decent amount apart. An intake should be lower than an output. I did my intake about halfway down the side of my pool and the output a couple of inches above that and a few feet apart. Here I am finishing attaching the filter, just using plumber's tape again. Now grab your hose, another male connector, and yes, the tape again, and connect it all together just like we did before. And finish by connecting it to the filter. At this point, I realized that the initial C-flow pump I purchased would not work for electrical reasons. I went ahead and estimated the amount of hose I would need to connect to the pump and the heater and dry fitted a male connector just so I could do other things until the right pump came in the mail. At this point, I'm mounting the heater to a structure I specifically built out of 2x4s and 4x4s for this project. I'm using screws to hold the heater in place and while I drill the holes and install the galvanized steel bolt. Once the correct pump arrived, I attached it halfway down the 4x4 using wood screws. I set a level on top of the pump while I was doing this to make sure that it was level. The pump has 2 ends sticking out. We'll call those hose connector ports. This is where the hose connects to the pump to circulate the water in from the bottom port and then out through the top port. The size of the connection ports is where it gets tricky. So on these particular connection ports, it is 1/2 inch. Our hose is a different size, being that it's 3/4 inch. This means that we need to use a coupling fitting with 2 female ends, meaning the threads are on the inside, that will allow us to open the connection ports to be able to then fit a 3/4 inch hose. Once the coupling fitting is attached, again, use your plumber's tape on the threads, then we attach the adapter to then connect the hose. The reason we cannot use our male adapters that we've been using throughout the video is because the threading of the coupling fitting is FIP and the threading of the previously used male adapter is GHT, which they don't fit together. The nylon adapter has MIP threading, which does fit with the FIP. Welcome to the second to last step. When you're building a hot tub, you want to make sure the connections are watertight. The most water pressure occurs at the connection site where the pump feeds the water into the water heater. The heater is built to kick on when the water pressure reaches 20 psi minimum. So there's some resistance between the water heater and the water flowing from the pump. To remedy the leaking, I did the exact same thing with the male connectors and the plumber's tape, but I added silicone caulk. I added a thick layer at the point where the hose would meet the metal on the connector, inserted the adapter, and firmly pressed down and tightened the metal ring clamp. Then I smudged the excess silicone down to fill any gaps and wiped off the excess. Next, add your tape to the heater's water intake connector port and connect the hose. Tighten that thing like your life depends on it, but don't break the connector port. In this clip, I have already connected the hose to the intake cold water port on the heater. The instructions will tell you which is which. So this clip is actually of me connecting the second hose to the hot water output, which is then connected at the other end of the hose to the output valve on the pool. The last part of your hot tub heater build is to connect the propane. Here I've wrapped a flare adapter with a different kind of plumber's tape that's specifically made for gas connections. I then attached the coupling fitting. I wrapped the gas port on the heater and the pointy end of the flare adapter with the gas plumber's tape as well before connecting it all together. I asked Zach to do this part as I wanted the connections to be as tight as possible, and it was really late and I was really tired. Then we connected our propane tank, which is Blue Rhino, and twisted open the valve to let some propane into the line and did a soap test to make sure the connections were fully sealed. The power source for this setup is an extension cord that is plugged into an exterior GFCI outlet that is connected to an outdoor staked power strip with an overload protection switch. And voila! Congratulations on modifying your stock tank pool into an on-demand hot tub. Heat time with this setup is usually between an hour and a half to 2 hours to get it fully to hot tub temp. I hope you enjoyed this video and it was helpful and answers most of your questions, but if you have any more questions, comment below.